The NFC South is a division with a lot of outcomes. In my estimation, there's a sleeper Super Bowl contender, two teams with young quarterbacks that could really determine their future, and a New Orleans Saints team that actually has the building blocks for a really successful team for years to come that we're going to talk about. But ultimately, the division could finish any of which ways. The X factors for the NFC South are going to determine these teams' seasons, so let's talk about them. For Tampa Bay, I do think that this team is truthfully one of the more underrated Super Bowl contenders. The offense was very high-powered last year, and they added some really nice pieces, got Chris Godwin coming back from injury, and that roster is very good. They have had the Eagles number, they have had the Lions number, the two best teams in the NFC over the last 3 years. So don't be surprised if Tampa makes a run. But here are some of the guys that are going to have to do great to make it happen. My honorable mention X factors: Zion McCollum, the cornerback for this team. Can he step up and be a true corner one? And Chris Godwin, the wide receiver. Godwin's coming off of a really tough knee injury. You want to see if he can get back to what he was in the first half of last year, as he was seriously on pace to have one of the better receiving seasons, obviously, of his career, but just in the NFL. However, my X factor for this team is edge rusher Calijah Kancey. And if we're being honest about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers here, there's not a lot of holes on this roster. It is very solid top to bottom. General manager Jason Light has done a fantastic job. But when it comes to edge rusher, I think that that's one of those positions where the Buccaneers are good, but not great or elite at this point in time from what we know about personnel. And to win a Super Bowl, you want to be great in the edge rusher category. We just saw how last year in Super Bowl 59, the Eagles pass rush was the difference. We've seen it before for Tampa, even in their Super Bowl victory recently over the Chiefs. The pass rush was the difference. You brought in a guy like Hassan Reddick, a veteran player. What can you get out of him? Vita Vea is obviously a menace up the middle, but I think Calijah Kancey is going to have to be the guy to take that jump. And Kancey entering year 3 has been pretty solid. 7.5 sacks last year, leading this team, and showed a ton of potential. Pro Football Focus, though, when it came to grading out Kancey's season, didn't exactly love him. A 50.4 overall grade, which was 146th out of 219 eligible edges. A 64.5 pass rush grade, however, which was 64th out of 219. So that puts him in like the upper fourth of pass rushers. And 36.2 on the run defense grade, 199 out of 219th. So it's clear that Kancey's hole in his game is certainly the run defense. But I still think if he could just take that jump to being an elite 10+ sack guy, it almost won't matter, because what you'll get from him off the edge will be an absolute disruptor. The thing for Tampa that really hurt them in that playoff game, especially against Jaden Daniels, was their inability to get third down stops and get Daniels off the field. And I get it, Jaden Daniels is a top quarterback talent in this league. But if you're the Buccaneers and you want to go win a Super Bowl, which I do think that that is a fair aspiration, your defense has to be able to stop these elite quarterbacks and these high-level offenses. And again, the best way to do that is by having a very dominant and a very good pass rush. And Tampa has that potential, but it takes a player like Calijah Kancey taking that next jump. And with his age and his potential, it's certainly possible. The Atlanta Falcons are a team that many in the NFL landscape believe are set for a jump as we head into the 2025 season. Hell, the NFL themselves believes it, giving the Falcons 5 primetime games this year. And I'm going to be honest, I'm a bit skeptical. I think for them to take that leap to being the winner of this division and better than Tampa, it's going to take more than just one X factor to perform. But I have a couple here to go over. My honorable mentions are both of this team's first-round draft picks, Jalon Walker and James Pierce Jr. It's no secret for Falcons fans and NFL fans alike that this team did not have a strong pass rush over the last, let's say decade. So they spent the draft picks to get 2 very athletic, very strong edge rush capable guys in Walker and Pierce Jr. Whether it's one hit or both hit, something needs to change for this pass rush. So they're both X factors in that sense. But my number one X factor for this team is quarterback Michael Penix Jr. And there's a lot of hype behind Penix Jr. this year. People are expecting big things. And I want to pump the brakes just for a second, because is this really hype for Penix, or is this just some form of combination of Penix looked so good last year because of how bad Kirk Cousins was looking for Falcons fans at the time? Is this because of how fun that game against the Commanders was when their defense maybe wasn't as strong as we thought it to be, with the points that they gave up to both Detroit and Philadelphia in the playoff games alike? Penix was solid for sure, but is he an elite high upside quarterback? I'm not sure. Penix was of course a solid college prospect, but I never viewed him as a game changer. A solid arm, accurate, but to me it wasn't special. It was efficient. And Falcons fans, I hear you. You could argue that with the offensive personnel your team has, all you need is efficient. So I took a look back at what Penix did in his 3-game sample size as a starter, which obviously is very small. But if you map it out to a 17-game season, he had 4,100 passing yards, which would have been 7th in the NFL, which is absolutely great. But then we get to some wonky parts of this. 17 passing touchdowns, which was just 21st in the NFL, but 17 interceptions was the most in football. Football games are won and lost by the turnover differential, and again, it is a very small sample size, so I'm not sitting here telling you that Penix is going to lead the league in interceptions next year. Don't hear what I'm not saying. On his sample size, he did. I don't think he's going to. I'm sure he's worked on his game. I'm sure he'll be better. But my point is, it's so hard to read from the small sample size that we had of Penix to say that he's going to be bad or great. He truly is very volatile for this team. And with how tough it is to diagnose what Penix is going to be for the Falcons, it almost makes it impossible to predict their record with anything other than the eye test and, hey, I believe in this guy, or hey, I don't believe in this guy. 2025 is going to be a massive year for the Falcons because we're going to find out if Penix is worth believing in and worth believing that he could eventually lead them to winning this division, NFC championships, or even a Super Bowl. There's so much unknown that he had to be the X factor for this team. The Carolina Panthers are a team that NFL fans and Panthers fans kind of fell in love with in the second half of last year, and for good reason. They had competitive games against both of the teams that were in Super Bowl 59, the Chiefs and the Eagles. Were they W's? No. The game versus the Eagles, though, certainly could have been if, Bryce Young had connected on that throw with Xavier Legette at the end of the game. But the question is for Panthers fans, can they maintain the second half of last season's level of play for all of 2025? It's going to take some good performances from some players to do so. My honorable mentions for X factors for this team are wide receiver Tetairoa McMillan and defensive tackle Derek Brown. Tetairoa McMillan, the wide receiver that this team picked 8th overall, is going to come into this team, and people are going to expect him to produce immediately and come out and be the wide receiver 1 for this team. He has all the athletic tools to do so. Not the fastest guy, but his size, catch radius, and yak ability certainly make up for that. And then Derek Brown. His defense absolutely struggled without him, especially the defensive line. And the scheme that they like to run is not a lot of defensive linemen in the box. Derek Brown's big body is absolutely needed for this defense to be good. But my X factor, I'm double dipping in the quarterback position. It's still Bryce Young. And I get it. Back-to-back quarterbacks is boring, doesn't feel like I deep dove into your team, but I gotta be honest, it's just the clear choice here because Bryce Young had a tale of two halves last year. In the first half of the season, this guy was benched for Andy Dalton at a certain point. In 2024, we're talking about Andy Dalton, who did come in and outperform him pretty drastically. But the benching did seem to be good for Bryce Young as the reset hit and he had some time to work with Dave Canales and came out in the second half of last year and absolutely balled. From the Chiefs game on, he averaged 225 passing yards per game, which isn't high, but it's not low either, and had 16 total touchdowns to just 3 interceptions in that time. Again, not great or elite, but on the eye test, Bryce Young absolutely performed. In the second half of last season, Bryce, with a subpar supporting cast, showed great decision-making, mobility, throw-making ability, and an ability to keep the Panthers in games despite a subpar overall roster. And as we move into year 2 of Bryce Young and Dave Canales, an offense that has been improving, you have weapons like Chuba Hubbard, Tetairoa McMillan, Xavier Legette, and Jimmy Horn, young pieces to be excited about. There is something for Panthers fans to believe in when it comes to this team. If Bryce Young is ready to show why he was #1 overall pick, there's no reason that the Panthers shouldn't have playoff hopes on their mind in December of this year. Let's be honest, Saints fans, many people are coming into this year expecting you guys to have a top 5 pick in the 2026 draft, but I think it's on the board that you outperform that. But it's going to take some really big performances from not just one, not just two, and hell, not even 3 guys that we're going to mention. There's going to have to be a lot of players on this Saints team that step up compared to last year. My honorable mention X factors for this team are, of course, Tyler Shuck and Kool-Aid McKinstry. Listen, I didn't want to do 3 quarterbacks, but obviously if Tyler Shuck is an absolute baller, that changes everything for the New Orleans Saints. But I'm guessing they're just hoping he could at least be a bridge gap quarterback as a 7-year college player and just come in and be a steady arm for this offense. Kool-Aid McKinstry, a guy that the team drafted out of Alabama, with Paulson Adebo gone, they are putting faith in him to be their #1 corner. Can he succeed? But my X factor for this team is none other than tackle Kelvin Banks Jr. And listen, even if Tyler Shuck stinks, or if Spencer Rattler has to come back in and he still stinks, the New Orleans Saints need Banks to be good no matter what. They need him to prove that he could be their left tackle of the future, whether that is one of those 2 young quarterbacks deserving and earning the job as the quarterback going forward for the Saints, or they go into the 2026 draft with a top 5 pick and say, let's go get our guy. Kelvin Banks has to be able to produce. Banks was league-wide viewed as one of the best tackles in a very good tackle draft last year, and what he did for Texas, making an impact not only in the pass but the run game, really helped them get to the college football playoffs. And if you're New Orleans, Banks and Fuaga look like one of the better tackle duos in the NFL. I think it's underrated how strong this team is at the tackle position as they look to build something. Again, regardless of who the quarterback is, when you start to look at the offensive personnel that the Saints are putting together, this is a good foundation. 2 very promising young tackles, a very promising young wide receiver in Chris Olave, who just has to beat some of these early concussion issues. Rashid Shaheed is an absolute deep threat. You still have Kamara, and, we'll see what that turns out to be. You bring in Kellen Moore to be the head coach of this team, had a successful run last year, obviously was the offensive coordinator for the defending Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles, and a defense that is full of veteran-led players. Listen, if one of your quarterbacks hits, the Saints could be a playoff team this year. But even if not, Kelvin Banks, that is the guy that I am watching if I am a Saints fan, because I want him to be my left tackle for the next decade. And even if we suck, hell, maybe he's out there blocking for his former Texas quarterback, Arch Manning, in 2026. But as always, football fans, these are just my thoughts on these X factors for the NFC South. Be sure to drop yours in the comment section down below. If you love the NFL and you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button for tons of football content. Check out the videos that'll pop up at the end of this video. I appreciate your guys' support. Peace.